Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the November episode of Big Girl Brunch with Bern. Unfortunately, I think it is now part of the Big Girl Brunch practice to cram this and to not do any edits on the episode at all. And so that's what we're going to do today again. It is November 28th. November does not have a 31, so I have 2 days left. I do not think I will touch this video as soon as it's done. It's just gonna go on upload schedule already. I'm so sorry about this. While I did not want to be mediocre about the podcast, I also need to be honest with myself in terms of what I can do, especially in a time of my life where things are just confusing and draining, etc., etc. I don't even know if I'm actually really busy or I have a lot on my plate or I'm just kind of out of it and depressed. I can't tell you. I don't know. But I guess for my life updates before we go into the meat of the discussion, I I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but I guess it's fine. It's my life. I am leaving my first job ever soon. I don't want to tell the specifics, but that's been the thing, capital T, these days. It's not a bad separation at all. It's not like something happened and that's why I'm leaving, or it's not like they fired me. It's just the natural course of life, I would say. But I will talk about that more soon. Hopefully next year we'll dive more into that. Another thing that happened in my life after the last episode happened was I went to Japan. I went to Japan end of October. I don't know. I think I didn't tell you during the previous podcast episode because I was so afraid to jinx it. Like maybe our flight will get canceled. Maybe the dates were wrong. Just stuff like that. That obviously we checked over and over, but I'm just superstitious like that. You can see my dog there. She's in the background. Anyway. But yeah, I was so afraid that hey, what's that? Sorry, my dog is testing her boundaries. She's gonna bark throughout this video, by the way, so I'm sorry in advance. I'm That's just gonna happen. That's just the life of being a dog mom. But yeah, we went to Japan and it was one of the best things that have it's one of the best things that I had ever happened to me. And it's one of the best memories I've ever made my entire life. I went with my partner and we were there for 8 days, 7 nights. Pretty substantial amount of time. We only went to wait, I just have to pick her up. Okay, she's here. What? Maybe I'll edit this a little bit because now she just interrupted me for quite a bit. Anyway, so it was Japan was really good. I didn't I didn't expect to have so many I didn't expect it to have so many stairs. I thought I was just walking, but I didn't know I was gonna climb upstairs, which I was not ready for. But I braved through it. The episode for today, though, is basically um, it's basically narrating or looking back at how we got to Japan, all of the things related to the question how. I was thinking of initially I was planning on making a Japan tips podcast episode, but I want that to be more detailed and I don't think I'm prepared enough to do that. So we're not doing that right now. It's just more of me telling you the story of how we got there and what are the things we prepared to get to Japan. So I hope you care. I have my notes. I actually have a little notebook where I put my notes. So we will go through the topics through that. The first question or the first point I wanted to address or answer was, why did we go to Japan? Well, the first answer is that who does not want to go to Japan? Everyone is in Japan. Everyone wants to go to Japan. Everyone is saving up for Japan. Everyone is looking for the next flight to book to Japan. So that's the main answer, obviously. But the second answer is that, so in 2024, my partner's cousins were planning on going to Japan all together, and Lucas invited me to this trip. Of course, it's KKB, kanya-kanyang bayad. Um, and I just did not have the funds to do that. Obviously, I could purchase my ticket, but I didn't have enough time to save up for the actual trip, which I just can't afford. Like, I don't have I don't think I have a substantial financial safety net, and I can't risk something like that. And so we didn't go, and we planned to do our own trip instead, and that's what we did. So when that was set by January 2025, we bought our tickets to Japan. We picked the airline, Cebu Pacific, budget airline, so it's cheaper. Although I think we still got a pretty expensive deal, but to be fully transparent about it, we spent around 18,000 pesos each. This includes one carry-on, 20 kilo luggage. I think we also got to pick our seats, and this is also already with travel tax. And lastly, it was refundable, so that was important to us in case anything happens, right? So all of that was 18,000 pesos each person. We booked in January for a flight to Narita Airport in October 2025. So it was 10 months away. So that's the first part. That's the story of why we went, and that's the details of our airfare. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is how did we find a hotel? So we looked for our hotel early. I think as soon as we had our flight, we started looking for hotels. I don't think either of us had enough experience looking for hotels, but we asked the people in our lives who could help us, and they gave us good tips. But I think it's quite easy with the websites nowadays. What we used was booking.com, but we also looked through Agoda. It's just easier that way. At first, I was asking him if we should look at an Airbnb as well, but it just seems like it's not as convenient. So, what were the factors when we were choosing our accommodation? The first one is that it has to be near a train station in Tokyo, because that is going to be the main mode of transportation. There are also buses, but the train will take you everywhere in Tokyo. And so that was a non-negotiable. We ended up staying near the Minowa station. It was like a 10-minute walk every day to the station, which isn't that bad really. Second factor was that we had to have our own CR. As a first timer, I didn't know that that was not a given. Because usually when I travel for work, we just have a CR of our own. We have a restroom of our own, right? Every room has a bathroom, but apparently in Japan, there's a lot of places where the bathroom is shared with other people staying in the accommodation, and that's no. We could not do that, so We also made sure to look for one that had a private bathroom. The third factor was that it has to be within our budget. I think our budget was 30,000 total for 7 nights, split between the both of us, so 15,000 pesos each at the most. And we went within budget. So that was good. So the result of this search was a hostel. It's called Dane Hostel 2 or Dine Hostel 2. It was quite nice. The room itself was nice, quite small, but enough for like just the two of us. And the price of our stay for 7 nights was 26,000 pesos for the both of us, so 13,000 pesos each. It wasn't bad. It was substantial. It was satisfactory, I would say. It had its own CR. It's a small hostel with a cafe. Oh, by the way, our room was not shared. So, usually, right, when we think of hostels, we think of sharing a room with strangers. No, we didn't have to do that. It was just the two of us in the room. But then you kind of had like neighbors. It's like a really, really small apartment type where there's like two other rooms in your floor. So you kind of see each other when you go out. But otherwise, there was no interaction, no hassle at all. The other thing is that it didn't have an elevator, which I really was not used to. But it was fine. My partner carried our luggage, so it was okay. The other thing is that our accommodation was pretty nice. It was very cozy and quite cheap for what we got. But the thing is, when we were walking, pwede ba medyo magtatagalog na lang ako? But the thing is, nung naglalakad na kami galing sa Minowa station because we commuted to Tokyo from Narita Airport. Nung naglalakad na kami, tapos malapit na kami, parang maraming mga places na medyo mga shops or like fronts of like buildings na medyo sketchy yung names. Like, I don't know, like Moulin Rouge. Tapos sabi ni Lucas, oh, I think we're in a red light area. And we were. But first, thankfully, we were walking in the morning. And also, kahit na red light area siya, wala ka makikita masyadong tao sa labas. They're mostly all inside whatever their buildings were. So honestly, for me, wala naman ako masyadong issue with that. Lalo, I wasn't alone. But that was something to note. And yun nga, we were near Minowa Station, a train station, and then we were also near a family mart. Yun nga, naghahanap na kami ng accommodation way before our actual trip. So, binook na namin to months before the flight. Kasi sa booking.com, you don't have to pay upfront. Merong latest date na ibibigay sa'yo when you can pay. And for us, it was like 1 week, I think, away from our trip. So, in-input lang namin yung card details namin and then it was automatically charged 1 week before the trip. And then parang kahit na nabook mo na siya, you can cancel pa. So, hindi naman siya, hindi naman nakalock ka na dun forever. The third thing that I wanted to discuss, and I think a lot of people would be interested in, is how much did we actually budget for the trip. So, this is the breakdown of my personal budget. This is what I survived off of. So my partner told me that 60,000 pesos for the entire trip outside of the flight and accommodation would be enough. And so that was what I saved. I saved 60,000 pesos in the span of 10 months. So basically 6,000 pesos per month and 3,000 pesos per cut off. Of course, there were months that I had more, so I would put more into the savings. But generally, that was how it went. I just really saved every month. And I think for some people, this would be nothing, 6,000 per month. But for me, I think it really affected my budgeting for this year. Sometimes I felt like I really had no money, which was not the case the past few years, which is weird because I have a higher salary now. And I realized it was because it was going to the Japan fund. No regrets. It was worth it, but that's just something to keep in mind. So the next question when we talk about budget is, did the 60,000 pesos fit? Yes, it did fit. Medyo sakto siya actually for me. I downloaded this app for the trip called Travel Spend so that I could track my expenses, and it tells me that I spent around 54,133 pesos out of my 60,000 pesos. So, 'di ba? Pwede na. That's how much I spent. So sa travel spend kasi, you put in how much your budget is for your travel, and then you put categories na you can punch in kapag gumastos ka para ma-record yung gastos mo na yun. Sinama ko yung accommodation dito. So my total budget was actually 70,000 pesos instead of 60,000 pesos because I was also accounting for the accommodation which we had to pay for. So just keep that in mind because now I will tell you how much I spent for each category and the percentage of this spending compared to the entire budget. Okay. So again, the total budget input is 70,000 pesos, right? With accommodation included there. So what were the percentages of my spending? This is so vulnerable, but I will share it with you because I feel like it's quite useful. So first up, for the miscellaneous category, which includes transportation, general things like eSIM, tickets for whatever, and groceries. So for miscellaneous, it was 9% of my total budget, or 6,289 pesos. Breaking that down, for transportation, it was 2,957 pesos. That's all I spent for the trains and the taxis, etc. I think we only took one taxi, but for the trains, that's basically all I needed for a week. Maybe like 3,000 when you do your budget if you are planning to go. Next is the general things like the eSIM and the tickets for things. It was only 2,097 pesos. We bought an eSIM called Ubigi, which gave you mobile data. Super needed these days. So, yeah. And then next for the groceries, aka mostly conveni things or convenience store things, I spent 1,234 pesos. And that's us going every night. Kind of crazy. Next category, we have accommodation. Again, this was already set before, so that was around 13,000 pesos of my 70,000 peso budget, or 19% of that budget. Next is restaurants or eating out or food. I spent 22% of my entire budget on food. I don't know if this is alarming, but that was 14,568 pesos for the entire trip. Again, please remember, we were there for a week. And we wanted to have fun. So, that's probably why. I don't even think it was that bad. But I think the biggest contributors to this number was, one, our standing sushi dinner. Very good in Shibuya. But we really, really splurged there. I would do it all over again. And second, we had an omakase experience. Our omakase experience was like 8,000 yen. So around 3,000 pesos. Not so bad for what we got. It was like a 26-course meal. So, sulit talaga siya. And then the last category, where I spent a whopping 50% of my budget, was shopping. I'm doing the percentages wrong, not of my total budget, but of my total expense. Anyway, so I spent 33,275 pesos on shopping. I think the biggest contributors to this were first Don Quixote, because that's where I bought pasalubong for family and friends. I went crazy. Well, I don't think I went crazy, but I was generous. Second, Itoya, which is a stationery store in Ginza. I bought a lot of things for family also, but for myself as well. Next is Tobichi, which is a Hobonichi store. That's also a big contributor because that was one of my main goals during the trip. And then lastly were my shoes, which I also really wanted, like my Rockfish weatherwear, but I think that was one of the biggest contributors too. Let me try to recall how much I spent for the biggest contributors. I think for Itoya it was 8,000 yen. For Tubichi it was also around 8,000 yen. Well, Itoya was like 13,000 yen. Tobichi was 8,000 yen. Shoes were 16,000 yen. And Don Quixote was 13,000 yen. So I think those were the biggest contributors, but obviously it accumulates. So, what is the total expenditure? Including the flights and the accommodation and then everything else that came after, I spent around 85,133 pesos for 7 nights, 8 days in Tokyo, Japan. That's not so bad. Or maybe I'm just gaslighting myself. Next I wanted to talk about with you guys was itinerary, although I'm sure it's not as interesting as talking about money. But the way we went about this is first we knew that we wanted an itinerary, but we didn't want to be super strict with it that we went crazy or that we were waking up at 4 a.m. every day because neither of us wanted that. We wanted to enjoy ourselves. So what we did was one of the first steps was we saved things on social media that we thought we wanted to go to in Tokyo. Then we pinned them on our Google Maps. The pins being in a group called like Japan 2025. And then we made a Google sheet indicating what we wanted to visit each day based on the Google map. So when you pin on the Google map, right, you can basically see all of the pins in the area. And so we were picking from those, picking our areas, and then picking the things in those areas that we wanted to go to, basically making a schedule for ourselves through that, through location. Because I didn't know this, but things in Tokyo are super far. When you go to one area, it takes long to go to like the other side. And the transportation is convenient, but things are still far. I didn't realize how much of a concern that would be. Next is on that sheet, we also listed the restaurants we saved per area just so we have options when we're in that area because knowing Tokyo, we won't always be able to go to our top choice because there will be a line because it is Tokyo. And that really helped, I think, just knowing what was there and what other things we could explore if our top choice has a really, really long line. The other thing we did in this sheet is that we had our blue schedule, right? We highlighted non-negotiables from that sheet so that we knew what things we could skip from that schedule if we're short on time, if anything else happens, right? Also really helpful. We did this for months and it wasn't like a chore or anything. We just kept seeing places we wanted to go to and Tokyo videos. So it was just like a work in progress until we went to Japan. The last thing I wanted to talk about is practical prep, just like the motions of the thing before we actually go. So first is we had to move our flight earlier. Our initial flight was dissolved and then we got moved to a later flight, but then our later flight was like 6 p.m. in the Philippines, basically making us lose one entire day in Japan. And so we moved it to an earlier time for free. Our flight was what? 5 a.m. I think 4 a.m. And sakto lang, I think perfect actually yung nangyari na yun. The next thing we did, we had to recheck our details and our flight itinerary just to be sure. We did this multiple times. And then I had a packing list, but this is just me. I always have a packing list when I travel. Next is I brought an extra bag in case we needed one, and spoiler alert, we did. So that was good. That it was funny because the bag that I brought that was extra was also from Don Quixote from my kuya's trip. So that was pretty useful. Next is we watched a lot of Japan preparation videos, like what you need to prepare before going to Japan, which helped us discover that we needed to fill up like the Japan web portal or something like that for immigration to be easier. Next is we got an eSIM from Ubigi the day of our trip. I think the $20 one, which is a 7-day purchase where I think we got 10 gig for 7 days. The other thing that we watched, which was important, was we looked for a video that taught us the route from the Narita airport to the closest train station to our hostel because Narita is outside of Tokyo. I didn't know any of this. Only my partner did because he's been to Japan. But yeah, so we watched a video of a person going from Narita airport riding the Keisei Skyliner to Tokyo, to Ueno. And that video tells you exactly what buttons you need to click when you are at the airport buying your ticket for the Keisei Skyliner, which is also a train. And so it shows you everything. And we watched that to prepare, which I think was actually really helpful for us. The other thing that we prepared was I transferred basically all of my travel money to my GCash, and we both got a GCash card because people say they have better exchange rates. I don't actually know how true that is, but that's what we did, and it worked pretty well. The last practical thing that I prepped before going was I brought dollars in case, just in case anything happens. I just don't like being anxious, so I brought $200 in case we needed it. So yeah, that's it. That's how we got to Japan. I will do a more specific Japan tips video, as I mentioned, if I get enough questions for it and if I have the time for it. But hopefully, I will get to the Japan vlog soon, which I think people will be most excited about. At least me, that's what I'm most excited about. Anyway, thank you guys for hanging out with me for November's Big Girl Brunch with Bern. I will see you guys next month. Bye.